humbled to have an opportunity to welcome my next guest. This is an individual that for me, I hold very near and dear to my heart. She doesn't know this, and we've got an opportunity to share my journey and how integral a part she was without knowing she was a part. But this is an individual who, to me, embodies the word grit, embodies the word resilience, embodies the word warrior. This is an individual that still to this day lives with some pain or a lot of pain. We'll leave that description up to her so she can walk us through her journey. And so it's an honor, a pleasure to welcome Amberly Lago to my podcast. Amberly, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. I am honored to have this chance to get to talk to you and share with your friends and your listeners. So thank you so much for having me on. And, just the brief conversation we had before you pushed record really just touched my heart. You get out there and sometimes share a message or share pieces of your story, and you don't know who might hear that or who might be touched by that. And so I appreciate you, and I'm so glad to be on this journey with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Amberly. I want to make sure that we talk about some things that you and I both share, and of course from different levels. Addiction for me was very painful. There's a lot of listeners that understand your pain and your journey and how resilient you were in overcoming that pain. Talk to me a little bit about Amberly. Talk to me a little bit about, what happened that one day, and then we'll kind of evolve and build some questions on recovery and how your mindset has put you on a path to help others. Talk to me first about that day. What happened?
Yeah. And my intention is to really share, everything that has helped me to be resilient. So, I'm hoping to really share some tips and tools. But that day, I was an athlete and a dancer. And from the time I was 3, I started taking dance and teaching dance by the time I was 13. And I live in California. I had just finished running 11 miles in my best time. It was a beautiful California sunny day. And I hopped on my motorcycle and I was headed home. And, there's something about being on a motorcycle. It's just, you feel the wind in your hair. It's just this sense of freedom. And so in the blink of an eye, everything changed when I made eye contact with a guy. I thought he saw me. And that's what you do when you're riding a motorcycle. You kind of make sure people see you. You're very alert and you drive defensively. And he didn't see me. There was nothing I could do but try. I thought, this is really happening. He shot out of a parking lot. I got hit, T-boned. I flew off my motorcycle about 30 feet, in fact, and I'm sliding down Ventura Boulevard, and that's a pretty busy street. And all I could think of is, oh my gosh, I hope another car doesn't hit me. Mm-hmm. When I came to a stop, I immediately grabbed my leg and looked at it once. Once was enough. I looked and it was just crumpled into pieces. It seemed like I had my leggings on. It seemed like my leggings were the only thing kind of keeping my leg together. My foot was dangling off, and I didn't know it at the time, but it was bleeding so much because my femoral artery was severed. And, I had a guardian angel that day for sure, because a guy came over right away and made a tourniquet around my leg. And thank God I didn't really know that my femoral artery was severed, because you can bleed out within minutes from that. So, I was saying cuss words and shouting out, call my husband. And I was afraid to try to reach for my own phone. I was afraid to let go of my leg. In my mind, I was thinking, well, my leg might fall off. And I was just trying to hold on to it. And then, when you're going through a situation, things were popping up in my head. One of the first thoughts I had was, oh, well, this can't be good. I may have to train clients on crutches for a while. And so my default was to always think of, well, what can I do? What am I going to do about this? I had no idea that this was going to change my life the way that it did. I was rushed to the hospital, put in induced coma, because I was slowly, all my, everything was stopping. I was going into shock, but my vitals were dropping, my organs were shutting down. I'd lost so much blood. Um, the next thing I remember was waking up out of a coma with tubes in my throat. I couldn't, you can't talk when, I don't know if anybody listening's ever been in a coma, but you wake up and you can't talk. And the first thing I learned was they said, we're going to have to amputate your leg. There's really nothing we can do other than amputation. You have a 1% chance of saving your leg. It's basically a war wound. And I held on to that 1% and thought, well, then there's a way. And I wanted to fight to keep my leg, because for me, it was not just, it was my livelihood. Running was my therapy. It was my drug of choice. It was what I did to feel good. I was the breadwinner of the family. My whole life, everything I'd ever known was what brought me joy was running and dancing. And I thought, well, I want to keep my leg. And I know there are plenty of people who, get by just fine with, Olympians and that are amputees. But I chose to fight for it. And that took 34 surgeries and a lot of grit. And by the grace of God, they slowly but surely put my leg back together. And that took about 3.5 months the first time in the hospital.
Unreal. I've seen several interviews where you talk about your conversation with your husband when he arrived at the scene. And to me, when I look at when I hear that and I see how you had to console him in a moment of anxiety and despair, it just speaks to your mentality as a man.
Well, thank you. My husband is this big, tough guy. I mean,
I've seen him. Yeah.
he's he's this big, strong guy. He's a first responder. He's retired now, but he was a lieutenant commander with a highway patrol. And when he got to the scene, he fell apart because he's used to seeing a lot of bad stuff. He's used to seeing trauma and dead bodies and shooting victims and a lot of blood. He was not used to seeing me down. And so when he was in the emergency room, I'd never seen him break down like that. I'd never seen him cry like that. And the emergency room was chaotic. It was, and I was, calm at this point. I trusted that I was in good hands. But the last thing I said to him before I was put into a coma was, I yelled across the room, Johnny, I need you to get over here and be strong for me. And it shook him up. The ER went dead silent. And later when I went to go visit the nurse, I wanted to see the nurse and tell her thank you, because she leaned over me and she said, we're going to give you something to make you feel all better now. And she made me feel like it was going to be okay. And she laughed and she said, we knew who we were dealing with when you yelled across that room. I need you to get over here and be strong for me.
The Texan came out.
Yeah. And it's funny because my husband now, he still go, oh, don't go Texas on me. Don't go.
Yeah.
He knows I have that side like that maybe it's that don't mess with Texas side, like get her done,
Amberly, talk to me about CRPS. I think very few people know it. I've had a chance to research it, knowing that you suffer from that. It's a suicide disease. Talk to me a little bit about that, being the one that has to push through it.
Yeah, well, going through 34 surgeries was hard. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Um, but the hardest thing that I continually have to do is to get through living with constant chronic pain from a nerve disease called complex regional pain syndrome. And I was diagnosed with this about 3.5 months after my motorcycle accident. Here, I learned to be tough, and I learned to push through the pain growing up with, a coach that was a real hard ass, growing up when I ran track, and growing up with a dance teacher who was like, I don't care if your toes are bleeding, put your point shoes on, the show must go on. Like, I knew how to push through. And so I was pushing through pain, and I would be in tears when the nurses would come over to change my bandages. I would just be in tears from the pain. And I didn't know that I was in so much pain. I thought that was part of it. But when I went to go, I was so proud to be upright, and I went to go see a doctor, and I thought, he's going to be so proud of me because I'm upright on my crutches when I was told, it'd take 2 years to walk. And here I am walking on crutches. So I'm going to push through this. I'm going to get better. And he took one look at me and said, you've got something very serious. And I was kind of like, yeah, I know I do. I was hit by an SUV. Of course, this is serious. He said, no. He examined me. He ran a few tests. But just by looking at me, he could tell that there was something really wrong. And he said, you have, back then he called it RSD. Now it's been called complex regional pain syndrome, or CRPS. He said, your life's never going to be the same. You're going to be permanently disabled. You need to go home and get back in your wheelchair. And I was devastated. And, I went home, and my husband was with me, dropped him off, went straight to physical therapy. And the therapist said, Amberly, what are you doing here? You don't have an appointment today. And I said, I know, but I just learned something, and I'm going to have to work harder than I've ever worked before if I want to have the life that I've always imagined. But I was devastated. I was in tears. And when I researched it and Googled it, which is the wrong thing to do, if you've been diagnosed with CRPS, I do not recommend Googling what it is, because you have to know, but everything that came up was so depressing. It was, it's dubbed the suicide disease because it's ranked highest on the pain scale. That means it hurts worse than passing a kidney stone, which I've done that. And I can tell you, it when you're having a flare up, it does hurt worse than that. Hurts worse than having a baby. It's ranked higher than when you have a limb amputated. And so to sit here and talk with you, and to see me, and you might see me smile, or somebody might see me walking down the street, they might never guess that I am living with a disease that's dubbed the suicide disease, that gives me pain every day. And I've had to change up everything because it was that, at first I was in denial. And I did not want to believe that I was going to be disabled. I didn't want to believe or tell anybody that anything was wrong. And by hiding those truths, and by keeping, I almost had like this double life where I was trying to pretend like everything was okay. But on the inside, I was just dying inside, and nothing was working. I was trying everything for pain. And, pain is pain. Whether you're listening right now and you're experiencing physical pain, or you have some emotional pain, pain is pain. And I did not want to deal with it. And no drug, no medical procedure. I tried everything: ketamine infusions, spinal blocks, spinal radio frequency. I had a spinal stimulator where they implanted nerve leads into my back. Nothing was working. And then I discovered that, well, lo and behold, this glass of wine kind of numbs that pain. And I remember thinking, well, this isn't the healthiest thing to do. And I'm a fitness trainer, and I've always been healthy and I couldn't run anymore. I couldn't process my feelings through that. And so I was sucking it up. I grew up with sayings like hide your crazy and be a lady and, cowgirl up. And so I was like, okay, well, this is going to help me stuff down my feelings, stuff down the shame a little bit because I felt so inadequate. I didn't feel worthy. I mean, I'm covered in scars. So I hated the way I looked. And I started drinking every day. And one glass led to another glass to another glass. And that really worked until it didn't. And my life came spiraling down to the darkest place that I've ever been in. And I remember waking up one day thinking, I do not want to live anymore, but I'm just too afraid to die. And by the grace of God, I prayed, and I feel like I had that little flicker of light left in me. I feel like we all have this light within us, and mine was about gone. But I had that little flicker, and that gave me just enough energy, just enough courage, because my God, was it scary to admit I'm not okay. I actually really need help. And I reached out to somebody and I said, I think I have a problem. I need help. And they said, you know what? I knew they were sober. And they said, you know what? I'm gonna take you to a 12-step meeting. Well, I never heard from them again. The reason I share this is because it takes so much courage to ask for help. And sometimes when we ask someone for help, they might not be able to help us. Don't let that stop you from asking someone else. Don't let that stop you from going, well, I got to figure this out myself. I Googled 12-step programs. I knew what that was, and I Googled that. I found somewhere I could go. That was scarier than any surgery I ever had, was walking into a room and having to admit that I had a problem. And
It's funny because whenever we're talking about that same thing, that particular topic in the fellowship of AA, and somebody has a slip up or a relapse, to build the courage to come back into the room is one of the most anxiety driven decisions that you can have. Sometimes as bad as when you initially asked for help, because now you've almost built this, I guess, reputation of being a contributing member of the fellowship, but now you're no longer considered sober. And that is so wrong, because the disease sometimes takes over. It does. And for me, I've been on the receiving end of those relapses where you don't know if you're coming, if you're going, and you don't know how it happened. You don't know how you picked up another drink, and now you're in a position where you're having to provide answers to a lot of people that had faith in you without them really fully understanding and embracing what the disease is. So I can relate to that.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and I remember sharing with my husband. I said, I think I have a problem. And, I was hiding it from him. I was hiding it from everyone. I wasn't hiding it very well. We think we've got it all figured out. And, I was not hiding it very well. If I look at pictures of what I looked like back then, there was not much of a sparkle. And I told him, I think I've got a problem. He said, oh, you do not have a problem. Anybody would drink if they had to deal with the kind of pain and what you're going through on a daily basis. And so, but I knew deep down, I knew that this was not right. And I knew that I wanted more out of life. And, there was a lot of shame, I think, for him, because he arrested people that were considered alcoholics. They were the ones, driving drunk, that he arrested, that were, doing really bad things. And, that just wasn't me yet. Thank by the grace of God, I never did that. I was like, I stayed at home. I was just trying to numb out. But, I have a little brother who, the disease, he didn't get help. And that led him down a really bad path. And he now sits on death row in Texas. And so who am I to say that couldn't be me? I mean, they say that if you are an alcoholic and you continue drinking, that it will lead you to death. It will lead you to an insane asylum. It will lead you, or to jail. And so I do have a very healthy fear of going out. Thank goodness I have one sobriety date. That's March 13th. I've got about 4.5 years of sobriety by the grace of God. And so I have a sponsor who has a sponsor who has a sponsor, and my sponsor shares with me how she had 10 years of sobriety and went out. And so by sharing our struggles by someone who has gone out and they have the courage to come back in, that gives others like that healthy fear of how hard it is to go back out and come back in. And I don't want to do that. So, I believe a morning routine, prayer, connection, accountability, all those things really help keep me sober and being of service, and living with the saying little things that help me get by one step at a time. Easy does it, keep it simple. Those things, they really help me every day. But that has been really a journey. And, and people ask me all the time, well, they think, wow, 34 surgeries, that's so much. And yes, that is a lot, but living with pain, and like I said, pain is pain. And right now we have so many people going through a lot of painful situations, whether they've lost their job or they're really struggling living under the same roof. I mean, we're still pretty locked down here in California. And if we find better coping skills, and that is why I share so much on resilience and ways that you can strengthen your resilience and really embrace the pain so you can get through it. The only way out is through. I don't know who said that. I think, what is that? Robert Frost? Someone said that, but I always remember that.
It's so good. So
That's
true.
not my quote, but it's true. The only way out is through, and we just have to get through these situations. And how we can do that is by adapting a mindset of resilience. And so that's what I'm passionate about sharing with others who might be going through some hard times.
When you look at your program and even your book, True Grit and Grace, correct? You highlight and you categorize some of those pillars that build and feed into resilience. What do you like? Walk me through maybe a 1, 2, 3, so that people, the subscribers, the listeners, can get a Cliff Note version right now, up until they get your book, so they can understand how you approach that grit, that resilience.
Yeah. Well, I had a friend of mine. We were at an event, and on our way home, she goes, Amberly, how do you do this? She goes, I don't understand how you continually show up. You speak at these events. You still train clients. I mean, doctors told you would never work again, that you would be wheelchair bound. How do you do it? She goes, how do you find that resilience and build on that? That's what you need to share. And so that night, at the dinner table, my husband, he could see like the pain in my eyes, and I had my leg propped up on the table and it was throbbing, and we're eating dinner, and he goes, you really need to pace yourself. And I was like, I do pace myself. And then I grabbed one of the dinner napkins and I started writing down everything I did throughout the day in order to get through a busy day and then still be upright sitting, even though I had my leg propped up on the table. I'm still sitting at the dinner table and I'm not in bed. And so I don't know if I started writing things down to prove something to him, but whatever it was, it helped me really look at what these things are. And the first thing, and I wrote down the word pace, and that became the word pacer, which evolved into my pacer method. And the first thing is, in order to be resilient, the P in pacer stands for perspective. And you have the ability to shift your perspective and change your life. And really resilient people do that, and they learn to do that quickly. And the easiest way to shift your perspective is to count your blessings and really get grateful, or you might want to call it hunt for the good. But I've had people go, well, how can you be grateful when you're stuck in a hospital bed and you feel like you're shackled to the bed and you're having surgery after surgery? And there's always something to be grateful for. I mean, when I was stuck in the hospital, I was grateful that I had a view. I couldn't go outside, but at least I could see outside. I was grateful that people brought me food. I was grateful for every single nurse and doctor that came in to see me. And when you take a look at anything in your life that you're grateful for, and you really start to focus on that, then the good keeps getting better. You start seeing more good things in your life. And so I always say, whenever I'm feeling like the other day, I was really having a hard time walking because of the pain. And I was so discouraged. And I was like, couldn't find a parking place. And I was thinking, how am I going to walk this far? And I was like, you know what? I have crutches in the back of my car. I can use those. At least I am out. At least I can drive, because for so long I couldn't drive. And so I think there's always something to be grateful for. The A in PACER stands for acceptance. And that is really about taking a look at where you are on your journey and not stuffing down the pain, but instead really looking at what's going on in your life and taking action steps to make it better. If we deny that something's, if we're not hurting, if we deny that something's not working, or it's, not, something's not working, it's kind of like we were talking earlier and I was like, I couldn't get my email working. Well, if I just pretended like my email wasn't working on my computer, then I would never get emails. I couldn't move forward with business. So for me, I had to take a look at and accept that I had this nerve disease, and then I could take all these action steps to eat better, to exercise the way I should, to eliminate certain things in my life, to wear clothes that wouldn't flare me up. So all of these things, whatever it may be in your life. The C in PACER is community. And I think it might be the most powerful part of, keeping to move forward, to be resilient, because I certainly could not do it alone. And just knowing that I'm not alone, like we were talking about earlier, I was like, I'm so grateful to have you as my sobriety brother. Sometimes you can be going through the worst day, but just knowing that you're not alone gives you the strength and the courage to go, okay, I got this one more day, one day at a time. I can get through this challenge or through this struggle. And when you can share something that is really meaningful in your life, even if it's a shameful or embarrassing moment, when you can share that with someone and they go, oh God, me too. That is like, oh,
I'm not
I'm
alone.
not the only one.
That's right. Just having the ability to get out of self, right? And that's the reason why this entire component around service and community is so important to me and to the brand. And when I'm coaching, working professionals and executives, and they like to inundate themselves with sorrow, this poor me pity party. And, and and for me, the recipe that's always worked for me is coaching people as well as coaching myself to get out of self. You go from being selfish to being selfless. And that immediately triggers this something within you that you say, like, my life is pretty darn good. But yet I find myself, basking in what, not glory, but basking in this negativity that is slowing me down, not letting me be the best version of myself. And so to me, that community-based approach really works. Really works.
Yeah, if you are feeling helpless, then go help someone. And
Mhm.
I think one of the things, besides really getting grateful every single day and writing down, and I still have my journal from the hospital and writing down everything I was grateful for, was I did whatever I could to be of service to others, even when I was in a hospital bed and couldn't even get up to use the bathroom on my own. I did whatever I could to be of service to others by making phone calls. Sometimes people just need to know that you're there. I was given the nurses in the hospital exercise routines.
The beauty of technology. So Amberly, you were sharing, I guess, the community category. Then the E is for what? What is
Endurance. And I think that, man, we need more endurance right now just to get through these times with COVID. We need endurance, well, along with a lot of patience. And I really feel like, if we're having a hard time, or it just feels like, oh, I just can't keep going, if you focus on your why, remember why you started. And that is always what encourages me to keep moving forward, is to focus on my why. And also, we're not always going to be motivated. And so I think it's really important, in order to have resilience, in order to have endurance, is to focus on a daily routine. I have a morning routine. I set habits of things that I want to do, and commit to them. And being committed is doing things like, when you can get excited about, I can't wait to work out. And it's like, then the day starts to go on and you're like, oh, I don't really feel like working out. Commitment is doing those things when the mood has passed, when you're like, don't feel like working out, but you still do them because you've committed to doing it. I think it's really important to be committed. And then the last part of PACER stands for rest. And I just wanted to call this PACER method PACE at first, because the rest was really hard for me. Like, I can go for it. I mean, I've got grit. I grew up with, like, I just want to get her done. I just want to keep going. And I kept learning the lesson over and over and over that I needed to rest. And
Mm.
I would ignore it, and I would end up in the hospital. I would push past the pain and end up in the ER. And so I have learned the hard way how important that the rest and recovery is. And, for me, for a long time, I felt like resting meant quitting. I grew up with, oh, you don't rest, because that meant I was quitting and I wasn't as worthy. Well, I had to really look at that differently. Like, resting does not mean quitting. It means that you're taking care of yourself. It means that you're recovering. You're replenishing your body. You're really respecting your body because you're listening to it. And I think that we have to look at it as rest is not a luxury, but it's really a necessity in order to be resilient. And it's really learning to push ourselves when we, push yourself beyond what you thought you could do, but then learning to give yourself the gift of grace and recover when your body
Love
and
that.
your mind needs it.
So good. And for me, like, as I'm building, the brand and taking on more clients and making sure that I'm anchored to them, right? It's this whole component. We've talked about it just recently, about getting out of me and giving to them. I sometimes will get in that hamster wheel where it's hard to get out.
Yeah.
It's hard to get out, because for me, I'm all about making sure that others benefit from how I've recovered. And sometimes people are not available during the week, and they may be available on Saturday or Sunday. And I'm the first to say yes. When I, like those should be my days for myself, for my families. And so I'm getting better at it. But I can't promise you that I'm the best at it right now. But I love the fact that it's almost like a mandatory part of how you approach this resilient mindset that you have.
Well, I know if I'm not doing my best, I can go down that list. If I'm not doing well mentally, like if I'm starting to listen to that inner critic of,
Mhm.
who do you think you are? Or you're not good enough, or you're not smart enough, or you're not capable enough. If I can shift my perspective, if I can accept where I am right now, if I can reach out to someone and be there, and part of community is, I think I have an accountability partner, and every morning we reach out to each other and we send a picture of something meaningful that we have read that morning, usually a passage out of a book, and we write
Right.
down 3 things that we're grateful for to each other. Endurance and rest. I can go down that list and I can see, well, I didn't do one of these things, and that's why I'm not as resilient. But if you can go down, I needed something quick, like a list I could check off. And
Mhm.
it's like, oh, there it is. I didn't rest. I've been pushing myself. I've been online nonstop on the computer since 5
Mhm.
a.m. No wonder I have a headache and I feel terrible. It's like, I need to take a break. Like,
Right.
get out, get some sunshine, move your body. And you know what? When you train your mind, you train your body, you own your life. And so
So beautiful.
I think if you can
So
do these
beautiful.
things, it changes your life. It has changed my life. And I hope that someone, tries this and it changes their life the way it has mine.
Amberly, I'm on record, and I'll tell you right now, I am indebted to you for your time.
Oh,
I've
goodness.
learned
My
so
pleasure.
much. I've learned so much from you. I learn from you as I follow you on the different platforms that you communicate your wonderful message. Continue being you. I'm a better person because of you. My recovery is strong because of you, along with others, but I shared with you that you're an integral part of that. So I want to thank you for your time, for your consideration, and everything that you've done for me and for the brand.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's really an honor, an honor. So, and you know what? Anybody that's listening, I check all my messages. Reach out to me. You can find
Yep.
me at amberlylago.com. And I hang out on Instagram at Amberly Lago Motivation. And I started on TikTok. I don't know if TikTok is banned in the
Really,
US.
really.
Oh my gosh, I only got on TikTok because my daughter was like, "You're too old for that." And I was like, "Then I'm definitely getting on it."
That's
And
right.
it's crazy. My like second video that I put up has almost 600,000 views.
Oh my goodness.
It's
Well, listen, that's why there's a reason why the Lago, Amberly Lago brand is so strong. I mean, listen, it resonates regardless of the platform, it still resonates. Keep it up. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.